for truth.
Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the mysteries of the past, and the uncharted frontiers of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together, we'll unravel the tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean, and today is episode 41. We're going to do part 2 of Lew Elizondo's book, Imminent, where I think we'll probably only be getting through a couple chapters, but we'll see.
Yeah, we always overestimate how much we'll get through. Then the conversation starts flowing and we get through like half a chapter.
Right. But we've got some stuff to start with. We've got some comments. We've got another comment from our sister, and
so we've got
our daily or our weekly Bashar.
Weekly dose of Bashar, yeah.
I've got some science stories, so yeah, let's
I've got some comments pulled up from YouTube. Going back about a month. So just in case people aren't aware, we took like a 2-week little break. We recorded a bunch, and then we're back recording now at the new house, recording.
So if it sounds any different, we're in a different environment here. There might be a little bit more reflective surfaces.
But Dean does a good job editing. So anyway, about a month ago, Mars? Is this Mars? This might be Mars.
On what? On YouTube?
On YouTube. Mayor RS357 commented about a month ago, Royal Star Regulus. And I think this is in response to the Chris Bledsoe episode.
It is, yeah. That's episode 12.
And then just after that, he writes, the Watchers were aliens that interfered with God's creation, and God made them watch over the human race because they interfered.
Oh, interesting.
So there was a punishment to be linked to Earth and not have free reign like they had before, in a sense. Right.
Now they've been donned with responsibility. That's kind of a bit in line with Owaspy.
Yeah.
I love how I compare everything to Owaspy like it's actually the Bible.
I mean, I do the same thing with Secret History now. Like, so many things make sense and are connected, right? Like, and this happens when you're in any kind of specific, like, genre. Like, they pull from each other's work or they have inspiration from. So it's not unheard of to have those kind of overlapping stuff. And then we have from Stealth, counter intel agent, and this is in response to our first Lew Elizondo episode, which he was.
I mean,
it's fair
for sure. That's actually
exclamation point
his job
at the end. Yeah, I mean that's for sure. I get what they're probably trying to say with that.
They're trying to say that his quote unquote disclosure or his leaks are all controlled and approved because they do have to go through the DOD to greenlight him on things he's gonna say. How I've heard it explained, and of course if you're conspiracy minded you won't buy this, is that essentially there's rules as to what the DOD can block you from saying. Like when you are going to write a book, basically they're going to comb through it, and anything that they can determine that is like directly a threat to intelligence assets, they can block, but they can't necessarily block you talking about like concepts and whatnot. And that probably is the result of that is probably why Lew doesn't necessarily, he's not out here like telling us where to find the saucers and dropping a bunch of new cases on us and whatnot. Although he was the one behind the drop of the gimbal and Go Fast and Tic Tac videos.
But a lot of those had already been surfaced before that even.
They surfaced through him.
Because I thought there was people who had seen them, videos like that. Like, I remember David Fravor saying that somebody from the military who shouldn't have had access to the type of videos he was seeing, if it was confidential, right? Them, like, finding it on some, like, military disclosure website, or like I don't know if you've ever been on those like websites where they show like military operations and like a lot of leaked footage and like so there's a lot of those websites where people put military operations on, like you'll see full-on warfare. If you go on these websites, you can see GoPro video where like soldiers will have GoPro video outside of whatever. Yeah. And they post it on these websites and they get, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of views on some of these videos. So there's a lot of people who go on and check these out. And I remember that was one of the things that I believe it was David Fravor who mentioned that somebody had come up to him and saying, I saw your tapes. And he's like, how do you have access to that? Like, where did you find that? So
it's probably because David Fravor wasn't involved in them going public. But
maybe. That could be.
Well, I mean, unless Lou's totally making it up, but I believe it was back in 2007, 2008, or no. It was like 20. It was before the New York Times article.
Okay.
So
2012, 2011.
It was earlier than the New York Times article, but basically he was just trying to get them approved for like a limited release within like certain channels within the Pentagon.
I see. And so that other people can have eyes on them and then make
right. So he could share them about the DOD.
So he didn't have to go into a skiff every time he was trying to like debrief somebody on it or something.
Right. He was trying to open up the conversation within the Pentagon, but the type of application, and this is all part of later in the book, but the type of application he had to do, the person in the department in charge of approving those applications for changing the classification status came back at him and said, well, the way you filed this, it's going to be a big pain. It's probably easier just to file for this like open full declassification.
I see. So it's just
and they recommended him switch his application to that. And he was surprised by that. And he's like, well, if you guys think it's more likely to get approved that way, I mean, that wasn't what I was going for, but if you think it'll get approved that way, let's do it. And it got approved.
Well, yeah, I mean...
And that's what allowed it to get shared to the New York Times.
Not every single person is a bad person, right? So the person working at the desk that's approving those things, they're probably like, yeah, like this is a loophole people use all the time, here.
Yeah, so...
not everybody within these complexes are bad people. They just...
So because of that reclassification, declassification, that's how that video was able to be shared about. And so... I believe it did circulate a bit before it actually got published by the New York Times. But the New York Times... That must be
what I'm thinking of. Is it
the
probably
New York Times was
quickly within
the one that published
military.
it widely.
Yeah. I'm assuming the military would have gotten eyes on it quicker. There would have been like... It would have circulated within their channels, within their
right.
scope.
Because it was set as declassified, they could have like pushed it off to websites and whatnot. Because it's not a leak if it's totally declassified.
Yeah, I mean, in the website that I'm talking about where you can see a lot of this footage, like a lot of military people go on there and watch these footage and like review them on like YouTube or whatever.
Do you know what website that is? I've never looked at those.
I've been to it a few times, but it's been a while. I know one of them was like, one of the channels that reviewed it was like Funker something. I don't know. We'll have to look it up and we'll put it in the show notes.
But anyway, thanks for the comment, Psy Stealth.
So he actually goes on, and Greg commented.
Right, the same Greg who's commented a bunch before.
Yeah, Greg, you're becoming a regular. Love it. He says, hi, guys. I'm reading the book now. and when I'm finished, I'll make my mind about it. So far, it's quite interesting, with a lot of things I didn't know before. And what's most important, in my opinion, it indirectly confirms what we knew all along. But what was perceived for decades as pure woo and tinfoil lunacy, so that's something. And then Stealth responded to him and goes, "I bet all the crap we've known for years, he's not telling it all." So he's again talking about how, you can't trust him or whatever. But
yeah, I mean. So in response to Greg, that's cool. I'm glad you're reading it. So write back in when you finish it and let us know your take on the book and what type of stuff you learned from it, because I want to keep this conversation going. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'll probably start speeding through some of the other sections because I really want to get to the meaty materials. This isn't meant to just replace your ability or your need to read his book.
Well, clearly Greg is like us, wanted to do his own research. And stuff,
so I'm glad he's reading it. That's awesome. But his point is, you're right, that it does indirectly confirm a lot of that stuff. And it basically, there is something psychological that happens. Like, even if you're like, to Stealth's point that, this is counter intel, even to that point, like, there is something psychological that happens when you get a bunch of government people
Psyops,
coming out and making it normalized that this is part of reality.
Well, before you finish that thought, like, just the fact that, so even if you believe full on that everybody who's leaking any information is a psyop, like Stealth is referring to here, I think that tells you something in and of itself. Like, the fact that they're out there trying to like manipulate your view on these topics tells you that there's something to be looked at. If you have that kind of mindset where you're not immediately thrown off because of whatever they're saying, you just believe it. Like, if you have, if you're just thinking for yourself, that in and of itself tells you that they're trying to manipulate your view on the topic.
Right.
So either way, whether it's purely counterintelligence agent stuff, there's probably more than just a nugget of truth within this information. So even if it's full on and we find out years later that all of this was just him trying to like throw us off the scent, at least we know that there's probably some nuggets of truth in there, and that
there's a scent to be thrown off of.
Exactly. And that he's probably including some things that can be verified or at least make more sense, so that those are the things that we need to latch on to as the community who's of just normal people who want this information out and want to be able to make up our own minds on this topic. I
mean, the entire UFO research community as a whole has pretty much already come to the conclusion that this phenomena is real. What they haven't necessarily done definitively is nail down what it all is, right? And so if you're looking for Lew Elizondo to tell you what it all is, that's not what he's there for.
Right.
What he's there for is to be a person from inside the government to add to the voice of these decades of UFO researchers and say, hey, you guys aren't crazy. This stuff actually is real.
Yeah.
And I can say so from within the government because I dealt with it. So
that's a good point.
Regardless of what he says on specifics, and that's where I'm less likely to believe him, right? That's where like the sort of psyop territory comes from. Like, if you're expecting the nature of his psyop is convincing people that UFOs are real when they aren't, I think we're well past that being on the table if you pay attention to the whole topic, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
But as far as what it is, and him like specifically like labeling it as a threat and whatnot, that could all be stuff that you kind of need to, take with caution. But
yeah, I mean, there's always a level of caution you take when you're consuming any type of information from any source, really.
Right.
But
right. We're not about taking anyone's one word on anything.
And we're not
going to
give you the answers either.
And we're not about telling you what to think either. It's all about like
your
throwing
journey,
information
being
out
a
there.
part of your journey, and like giving some information out that you may have not seen otherwise, right?
Yeah.
And having a conversation about it. You know, our ultimate goal is to have a conversation with y'all. And Greg and Stealth, we appreciate it. Mars, everybody. Mayor R, whatever your name was.
Mayor RS.
Mayor RS 357. Appreciate you.
Cool. All right. Our next comment was another one from the number one fan sister.
Number one.
I believe this is in reference to our last episode, number 40, which was about the morphic resonance and like the synchronicities and lucid dreaming, and I think it's all the stuff we talked about.
We covered a lot of different topics in that one. Yeah, we kind of brought it into everything there.
Yeah, she says, finally was able to leave you guys a review. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Did you help her with that?
I did.
Okay.
It turned out, if you remember, we had given her a link to listen to the show before we officially released. So she was subscribed directly through our website, not through iTunes, and that kept her from being an interface with iTunes.
Interesting. So she could have gone to the website and left a review.
No,
there's no
because
reviews
the reviews are through
that's true.
through iTunes,
right.
the podcast app. So
that makes sense.
Once I deleted it and resubscribed through Apple Podcasts, then she was able to leave a review. So
nice.
Now we can be less hesitant to say, if you're enjoying the show, if you're listening on podcasts, go on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. It really helps the show get a little more visibility.
Yeah,
so
please.
Thank you. So she said, love the lucid dreaming talk in the last episode. I've experienced it myself, and it's sort of unbelievable to most, I think, unless you experience it yourself. So it's unbelievable to most unless you experience it yourself.
Right.
I would have this tsunami dream that kept reoccurring. It was a nightmare at first, and I hated having the dream until I realized in my recurring dream that I've been here and I know exactly what's going to happen. Lucid dreaming. So instead of watching the wave destroy, I rode the wave. I turned it into a water slide experience, and it became a pleasant dream and faded after that. Never recurred after I gained control of it. Dreams are so fascinating. So many reasons why we dream. So much interesting information and theories out there. Hint, hint. Like, we need an episode about it, boys.
I think we need to have you on for an episode about it.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good third-party episode for that.
For sure. If you're comfortable, like, doing a whole episode on dreams, or
just talking about it. Like,
oh, for sure.
Like, just talking about, like, I have some weird dreams I could talk about. We could talk more about her dreams. Like, I know you have some dreams
what I was looking for is more like, I would like some like book suggestions because I've never really read into dreams.
Yeah, but I mean, you have experience with dreams, like
for sure.
That's what I mean. Like, I think that would be a fun topic to have a guest on for, especially because it's also subjective. So it's also
but I want to know what people who study dreams have to say about it, and I've never looked into that.
But I think we should have our conversation with somebody else before. And then look into dreams, like, scientifically, and, like, talk to people, like, listen to people who have...
I mean, that's fine, but if it's just going to be an episode about us sharing dreams we've had in the past, like...
No, but, like, just talking about our thoughts on them without having any bias on what the scientists have to say about dreams.
Sure. Okay. I mean, if you want, I'm down.
I think that would be a good episode.
If you're down, Amy, let us know.
Yeah, please, Amy. We'll come do it around your fire. We'll bring the mics.
Yeah, I could bring my...
Or you could just come here because I have a bigger house now.
Well, yeah. So I actually, on that topic, I know I've been talking about how I haven't been smoking and I've been dreaming more and more intensely. And I actually got lucid for the first time this morning.
Oh, yeah?
Just slightly. It was one of those situations where, like, you woke up having the dream And like, because I didn't fully get up or open my eyes, but I was
go
awake.
right back into it.
Well, I didn't even fully wake up, but I became conscious. Like I knew, like I could feel the room around me, but I could also still had the dream going.
Yeah, I've had that so many times.
And so instead of getting up or like drinking water or going to the bathroom, I just stayed there, not asleep, but not awake. And I was able to like interact with it and like ask questions of like some of the characters that were in there with me. It's really weird.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was like some post-apocalyptic thing. I just, at some point I found myself swimming in water and like, there was school buses in the water, which is weird. And a bunch of other random stuff.
I've been in that state so many times.
Making progress on my dream journey.
Before, like when I was a kid and like would have my reoccurring dream that happened like almost like every night for years and years and years. Like I remember having this moment where it was like you're awake, you wake up from a dream. It feels like, but you're still like fully capable of accessing the dream, but you know where you are physically at that point.
Yeah.
So you know, like your body is in your bed. You know your entire surroundings based off your senses. So you feel, you smell, you know all the things. Without your eyes open, you just maintain the dream, and you have that moment of like, okay, what are we gonna do now? Like, and then your brain is able to like come up with suggestions, like it does, you know, in your normal waking life. You're able to like access a bunch of like thoughts, and then you can like choose where you want to go from there. And I remember there was a few times where I would actually be able to direct the dream into a certain area. And usually what happened was like if I had like a dream, or if I had the thought of like, I want this to be exhilarating, or I want it to be like a water slide or this or that or whatever it might have been, it was always the thing that woke me up finally.
By trying to change it.
To change it. After that moment of like, I am dreaming, but I'm awake. Like I have full, like it, immediately after that, as soon as you made the decision to try to change something within the dream, it always woke me up.
Yeah.
So I was never able to get to past that point.
Yeah. So I have had plenty of times in the past the experience where like you actually wake up, like your eyes open and you like maybe sit up. And then you like look around, still middle of the night. You lay back down, you close your eyes, and you can kind of keep the dream going. And I don't exactly consider that lucid. It's more like wishful dreaming. Like you're trying to bring on a dream that you were enjoying again. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But even if it works, you're not necessarily, it's never the same when you like conjure it up on purpose.
Yeah.
And then it'll eventually like slip away and go into something else. Whereas this time was the only time where like I just became conscious. Like I was awake without opening my eyes, and I knew I was in my room, but I felt myself, I was experiencing the dream. And I actually like reached over, there's a pillow next to me where I sleep, and I like touched it just to like confirm that I was awake.
That was your thing.
Yeah. So like in the real world, I felt myself touch the pillow all while keeping my eyes closed and experiencing the dream, which is interesting. But I don't know why I still don't have a journal next to my bed. I'm not writing these down.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. We can have a whole conversation about this, especially if we have a third party here and we're riffing off it. I think we could have a full conversation. But
I do want to learn about dreams. I just have never like done research on them. The closest I've got is like reading about shamanism and
the majority
like
of like what the
content.
scientists are saying, other than like that kind of like talk. Like if the science, they're telling you your rapid eye movement, it's chemicals in your brain misfiring.
Yeah, but it's not just scientists or conventional scientists.
That's
like,
what I mean. Conventional scientists
I want interesting
tell you
thinkers who talk about dreams, not necessarily modern science.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. That makes sense.
I want to learn about them, but if that, I'm not. Yeah. If I'm just learning that, oh, this is the phase of sleep in which you're in this brain cycle, that's not exactly the type of information I'm looking for.
Right.
So,
which it is interesting because knowing the different cycles and the frequencies of the cycles, you can understand that maybe there are different levels of consciousness that you're accessing at the moment. So like every different cycle you're in has a different frequency for your brain to be accessing. So when you're in deep sleep, you're in like theta waves. And or not deep sleep, but REM sleep, you're in theta waves, and your brain is at a frequency where you're experiencing what you would be experiencing if you were fully awake. Your brain would be experiencing, but the information it's gathering is from stored information, not from input.
At least that's the theory.
Well, right. What else? I mean, yeah, it could be some input still. But otherwise, your eyes aren't open. Your brain shut down to your smell. Your brain shut down to all these other senses. So what else would it be other than like storage?
Well, I think they've done brain studies showing that you are accessing memory.
That's what I mean. It's all memory. Majority of it is memory, and like
that's kind of why I want to read about it too, because like I don't want to just speculate, because I want to know to what degree, like if you're accessing memory, how different is that from accessing memory during your day? Or also,
I would imagine it would be more vivid, because when you're awake, your senses are already tied up.
I mean, as far as the like brain scan patterns of like regions of the brain that are lit up simultaneously. So like I would think, I haven't read a lot about the brain either. I'm pretty ignorant on a lot of these topics, so this is like fresh material to explore into. But like obviously your brain, brain scans are able, and fMRIs and all that are able to show different areas of your brain like lighting up with activity through different actions that you're doing, right? And a lot of modern science is like putting people in these machines and asking them to perform a task and seeing what areas are lit up consecutively.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you can tell, like if you're accessing the smell centers while you're accessing the memory center, maybe that connection of those two is showing what's happening in that current state, right? So is there a difference between creating memories throughout your conscious life as you're walking around, as you're observing? Like you're also kind of creating memories of what happened in your life as you're going through it. But is that different from access to memory centers while you're dreaming, as far as like what other areas of the brain are lit up at the same time? Like, is it a totally distinct state in that way?
Yeah, well, like imagine if there was like there's like a data center that maintains all of the information that you learn throughout your waking life, but there's a completely different one that maintains all the memory from your asleep, like dreaming state. So like maybe there are two different lives you're living in a sense, where there's like a whole different center of data. It's that's capturing the data from whatever experience you're having.
Yeah.
So while you're asleep, the data is captured on the B drive, but while you're awake, the data is captured on the A drive. So while you're awake, you only access the data from the A drive, but while you're asleep, you only access the data from the B drive.
Oh, interesting. Like, are dreams forming memories in different chunks of your memory system that aren't accessible while you're conscious? Huh. That's an interesting question.
An interesting question to ask somebody.
But I'm also
done
interested
the research.
in the like philosophical and like spiritual side. So any book recommendations, send them our way. Like I want to know. Like I know there's a ton of books out there, like how to interpret dreams. If you see this in your dream, that symbolizes
it means
that.
This. Yeah.
I don't know how serious to take all those, and I don't know how in unison all the people who write those are with each other, or if it's just kind of a arbitrary that each book you read will give you a different interpretation.
That's what I mean by it might be such a subjective topic that anybody you read is going to have a different take on it, you know?
Right. If there is like trends or commonalities between different authors.
That's the interesting stuff.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
And more of like a spiritual aspect to it too.
So
because like if we have like, let's say the like antenna theory of the brain is true, and that you are some sort of conscious entity that is connecting to a physical body, and you are not the physical body. Then that could have totally different implications for the dream state.
Absolutely.
And what's actually happening. Like maybe you're going into some chunk of the spirit world where your consciousness, as your brain does all its reformatting, is like creating these fantasy landscapes. But if you can happen to wake up, become lucid, now all of a sudden you can control. And so then what's the distinction between a dream, lucid dream, remote viewing, shamanism? Like these things all seem like similar but different and distinct. Where does one end and the other begin?
But within the same framework. Yeah. Well, it sounds like we're getting ready for a dream episode.
Well, yeah.
Appreciate the comments and all of the.
I want to learn a lot of like.
Yeah.
I don't want to just have a whole episode just talking on my ass with no like rhyme or reason. What we just did now is about as much as I'm comfortable doing without having anything more to like draw from.
All right. Well, we're going to do some research, and please,
or someone to interview about it who feels
talk to us, expertise. Give us some recommendations on books that you've got on dreams, or if you know somebody who
or
would
YouTube
be a good
videos
person to talk to,
documentaries, whatever.
Yeah, if you know anybody who'd be a good person to talk to on the topic, let us know.
All right, we're going to take our first break here, so enjoy this song by Stevie Nader. It's called Speculate. Speculate like we just did about dreams.
Yeah, I was going to say
I feel it like a child again. The intuition of a fool sent out into the wild, pretend that I know what to do. Oh Lord, oh my, I can't describe. Oh Lord, oh my, I can't describe the feel. I don't speculate, I don't speculate, I don't speculate you. Don't speculate, I don't speculate, I don't speculate you. all the time. I question where we go. Suspicious paradigm, but it's you I know. I don't speculate, I don't speculate, I don't speculate you. I don't speculate, I don't speculate, I don't speculate you. I don't speculate, I don't speculate, I don't speculate you. I don't speculate, I don't speculate, I don't speculate you.
Duality check, where we are going to promptly start speculating.
Exactly. I'm telling you, these titles, they're always so spot on.
So, what are we drinking today, Drew?
Well, Dean was a little late because he picked up some Pliny the Elder.
Yeah, one of our customers.
One of his customers.
Is a tap house and like a beer retailer. And yeah, they had a bunch of bottles of Pliny the Elder, and every time I go there, I can't help but buy some because I don't see it anywhere else like convenient to buy.
It's always a great IPA.
Mm-hmm. So Russian River Pliny the Elder. If you are a person who's been skeptical on IPAs, or if you're a person who likes IPAs, you got to give this one a shot if you haven't had it.
It's a classic. It's really good. And it's not all that well known. I don't know. Or at least well distributed.
So here is some description from the bottle, which I find humorous.
Okay.
Does not improve with age. Hoppy beers are not meant to be aged. Keep away from heat. Respect your elder. Keep cold. Drink fresh. Do not age. Pliny the Elder is a historical figure. Do not make the beer inside this bottle one. Not a barley wine style ale. Do not age. Age your cheese, not your Pliny. Respect hops. Consume fresh. And it says, if you must, sit on eggs, not on Pliny. Do not save for a rainy day. Pliny is for savoring, not for saving. Consume Pliny fresh or not at all. So
great advice. It is really good cold.
Yeah. Drew got a freezer frosted mug to enjoy it from.
I did. I already had one, so it's less frosted and less freezer cold now, but it still is good.
It's delicious beer. Super. Yeah, it's very hoppy, but it's like such a nice like old school West Coast type of bite to the hops.
Yeah, I enjoy it a lot. It's been a few years since I've had one, so appreciate you bringing that over.
It's been years since I've had Pliny the Younger. That's the one that they only release once a year.
Yeah, I want to get our hands on some of that.
Yeah.
Maybe we have to go up there. Go up there during the time when they usually make it.
Yeah, up to Russian River.
Yeah.
Here it's quite hard to get to. But
really?
Or like hard to get into because there's a lot of people that try and get it. At least that's how it was in the past. I don't know if they still have the same hype around it as they have. But anyway, Pliny is delicious.
And it's also, what, 8%?
Does it say on here? 8%, yeah. Which is dad approved.
Right on.
Heck yeah.
Cheers, Dad.
We drank some out of styrofoam cups at work last time I went by that customer's place. I brought a bottle back, and Dad and I shared one at work.
Nice. That's awesome.
All right. So I got a couple stories for us.
Okay.
Some science ones. This one is super interesting. I just saw Anton Petrov did a video on it, so I'll link that as well. But there has been a new observation of actually for the first time ever being able to see detail on the surface of a star.
A different star.
Yeah, other than the sun.
Okay. So you see like the spots and stuff, or at
Yeah,
least some of it?
See the photo here?
Yeah.
You can see those lumps and whatnot. You can see like a halo around it.
Yeah.
So the headline here is ALMA, what's one of these telescopes, reveals a star's surface in unprecedented detail. New observations show that the bubbling surface of the red giant star R Doradus, a feat previously only achievable with the sun.
With our sun, right?
Yeah. The stars in the sky are so distant that they typically appear as pinpricks, even to our most powerful telescopes. Aside from the sun, only a few nearby bloated stars appear large enough to capture any features on their surface, however crude. New images released September 11th, however, capture one of the most detailed images ever of a star other than the sun, and it's one that previews the fate of our own solar system. In research published in Nature, astronomers using the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array, ALMA, in Chile, capture of images of star R Doradus that are so detailed it's possible to make out gas bubbles on its surface. Previously, this was only possible with the sun.
Wow.
A few factors led to the ability of ALMA to discern such fine detail. The star is only 180 light years away. As a red giant, it's both huge, 350 times the diameter of the sun, and relatively cool. And each of the bubbles on the surface is about 75 times the size of the sun.
Jeez.
But don't let its huge size fool you. Our Doradus's mass is comparable to that of our sun. When stars like the sun exhaust their supply of hydrogen, their outer layers expand and they become red giant star. This expansion vastly reduces the density of the star's outer atmosphere, meaning that despite the size of our Doradus's bubbles, they're quite diffuse. Several, in fact. Both of our own Earth's atmosphere is more dense than the outer layers of our Doradus. Wow. Our Doradus is classified as a asymptotic,
yeah.
Giant branch, or AGB star, whose core is no longer undergoing fusion, but where helium and hydrogen are still fusing in shells around the inner carbon-oxygen core. We chose our Doradus because it is one of the closest, possibly the closest, of the AGB stars. Study author Wouter Vlemmings of the Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden says, it's also the largest star after the sun in angular size on the sky. So the researchers hoped it could yield the level of detail they wanted. And they were able to take multiple pictures, and so you can actually get a sense of how the atmosphere changes. So check this out.
Kind of expands and
look at it.
Tracks. Yeah.
So you can see the bubbles like shift and move.
Yeah.
So we're starting to enter a new age of astronomy where we can see stars in greater detail. So yeah, I'll link that, and I'll link the Anton Petrov, because I haven't even listened to that one yet. I bet he's got some interesting stuff to say about it.
Okay.
Then I've got another article here, Live Science. And the headline is God of Chaos, Asteroid Apophis could still hit Earth in 2029, study hints, but we won't know for 3 more years.
Jeez. That means we're only going to have, 2 years to do anything about it if it is going to hit?
Yeah.
Unless we start doing something now.
Yeah. New simulations. 3
years from now, so 2027. If it's going to hit in 2029, we only have 2 years.
Right.
Give or take, unless we do take some steps now.
New simulations reveal that there is an extremely small chance that the city killer asteroid Apophis could be nudged onto a collision course with Earth by another asteroid before it flies past our planet in 2029. There's a slim but overlooked risk that the, quote, god of chaos asteroid Apophis could hit Earth as it makes super close approach in 2029. The odds of such a calamitous collision are more than 1 in a billion, but we won't be able to rule it out for at least 3 more years. Apophis is a peanut-shaped space rock about 1,100 feet across, or around the same size as the Eiffel Tower. At this point, the chunky space rock is not hefty enough to be considered a planet killer asteroid, but it's big enough to wipe out a large city and trigger planet-wide climactic effects. The potentially hazardous object was discovered in 2004 and was named after Apep, the Egyptian serpent god of darkness and disorder, which has earned it the nickname God of Chaos. Shortly after the space rock was discovered, astronomers revealed that Apophis would have an extremely close flyby with Earth on April 13th, 2029, right after my birthday, sparking fears that it could hit our planet. Sorry about that. So, yeah, follow-up observations revealed that the asteroid will sail safely past Earth at a distance of less than 20,000 miles. That's less than 1/10 the distance from Earth to the moon.
That means we'll see it.
It should be visible at that distance, you would think, yeah.
At that size, too?
Yeah.
Eiffel Tower-sized object moving 20,000 miles away. Should be.
In theory, we should be able to see that for sure. Yeah. And it's actually, so here's an interesting image here. It shows about the trajectory it's supposed to take and then Earth satellites. So it's actually going to be passing by us close enough that it could knock out some of the satellites that orbit Earth.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Which is crazy.
That means it'll be just within orbit.
Right. That is crazy. That's crazy close.
Like you see a curve.
Mm-hmm.
that curve is from the gravity of the Earth.
Right.
That curve is not from its trajectory.
Well, I'm sure some of it is, but yeah.
It's got to be some of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the majority of it, at least. Interesting.
Yeah, pretty crazy, huh? And here's some photos of it. So I'll link this story. This is, I promised you guys a number of shows ago I'd keep up with these close
Asteroids.
flybys as they collect. And I know there's so many more than I've ever covered, but yeah.
All right. So in light of that, let's cover some funny shit.
Okay, for sure.
Let's so this is in response to Donald Trump's comments during the debate with Kamala Harris
about the
cats and dogs, the pets being eaten in Ohio.
Yeah.
So this is just a funny video. It's nothing serious meant by it, but it's hilarious.
I don't think we need the music. POV, cats in Ohio, prepare for war. Yeah. It's this AI-generated video of cats all suited up in military garb, if you're not watching the video.
It's just an amazing representation of it. It's so good. I would watch a whole video on this.
Dude, someone needs to make a movie.
That's what I'm saying. Dude, a cats going to war movie? Are you kidding me? I would buy the shit out of that. So good. So good.
I want to see them like on the front lines and then they just like lay down and take a nap.
Yeah, they'll go.
And then like a bullet or something hits nearby and it just jumps and darts off.
So I just wanted to break the ice with a little bit of comedy. And then we'll go into our weekly dose of Bashar in this to potentially we'll see where this goes. But
all right, here we go.
For the fact that you actually had these kinds of encounters with extraterrestrial beings in your history it is very unlikely you would actually have expressed your spirituality as you do today in the form of religion. It's actually a relatively rare thing we have ever encountered on any other planet, that you actually have this kind of religious rituality surrounding your spirituality and your connection to creation. So it is primarily because of those interactions that it has been transformed down through the ages in a religious context, yes. If it wasn't for the fact that...
So yeah, he's talking about like the idea that like the whole 12th planet like idea of like being interacted with at such an early stage in human development that we developed these religious texts. Like we had these extraterrestrial visitations that sparked the religious notion. Like they were telling us about these things that we needed to know. And it begs to like, it starts to offer that idea of like the beginnings of religious context in humanity.
I'm taking this as like, because we're one of the few places that these entities travel to and interact with that have this thing called religion. And it's kind of weird that we do. And because we do, it serves as a filter between us and like direct access to spiritual encounters.
But it's not something that they did. It's more of a sense of like, it's something that we created ourselves to keep us arm's length from the truth of like what it is, like really, like what it is that we're experiencing really.
Yeah.
Within spirituality.
Yeah. Like religion itself is sort of acting as a filter between us and real spiritual experience.
Well, and the encounters themselves, right? So like the idea of
that may make us an interesting planet to study.
That's what I mean. Like if we're one of the few or one of the only planets that they have observed, like this, them being Bashar or
whatever race
or whatever intelligence might be
represents.
Well, yeah, whatever intelligence he might be representing here. If we're one of the few, then maybe we are one of the few who was kickstarted by them. Or not by them specifically, but by some sort of entity in the history of our planet that might have come down for, say, some purpose, engineered us to be in their image, but not allowing us enough information to know the truth for ourselves. So instead of knowing the truth ourselves and not building up these religions and just knowing, we built up the religions to give us some sort of story that made sense, that we could follow, that could guide our spirituality to the future.
It's sort of suggestive of the fact that like in a normal developmental process for a species or a civilization on a planet that isn't being interfered with, is that there would be a natural process of discovery and communication between the people of their spiritual experiences rather than a dictating from on high of what these things are and how you are to believe them and how you are to interpret them. Because that's interesting, because, religion essentially is here telling us that all of these, things that we're talking about kind of are true, but only in a very narrow context and in a specific way.
As soon as you go outside of those, they label you woo. Sorry, excuse me.
Or heretic.
They label you heretic, or while the other side of the coin labels you woo, right?
Well, that's in the modern context, but think of for the rest of history before science existed.
Yeah, you're a heretic, but at the same time, you're woo in modern context, right? You're the person that they can make you a pariah. They can make you. They can turn the context in which you're saying your information.
Oh, that's so interesting. So think about this. Think about what would happen again in a civilization that developed this stuff organically without religion in the way. If there was like an organic ground up spirituality that everyone just talked about matter of factly, because everyone sort of knew how to experience it and shared their experiences, and so everyone,
like they talk about in the Secret History, like these mystery schools and how they interact.
Right,
with
but imagine it being like just as easy as it is for you to be like, yo, I had this crazy dream last night. If it was that easy to be like, yo, man, my remote viewing last night, I went and checked out Saturn and I met these aliens and it was like this and this and this. Imagine if it was like, because everyone had similar experiences.
It was just a normal way to interact with people. It was like talking about everything as if it was
because there's no religion. Life. And now imagine
to separate the different contexts of things.
There's no like rule or structure of how you are supposed to believe. And so you can just kind of socialize about it. It's not a taboo topic. Right. And now imagine if you grew up with like your civilization grew up with those experiences and then discover science under the backdrop of already having matter of fact about these experiences. How much differently would science develop if all of these spiritual matters were just a matter of fact of life?
And yeah, they were able to build on those or philosophize those concepts and then turn them into hypotheses and then work on them. Right.
It wouldn't be this big. See, because what's interesting about our particular history with religion is that science is almost, it's not completely accurate to call it a rebelling against religion because a lot of the first science was started by religions and like monks and whatnot. But eventually, like with the Enlightenment and stuff, it became a sort of like a rebelling against religion. And that's when you started getting the first like scientists who are atheists and stuff. And so it's interesting because our particular history and development of science is trying to explain away religion with science. But if spirituality without religious doctrine is a matter of fact way of life for everyone, part of the experience
and maybe
of
science
life
is doing the job to prove that.
Right.
And like if you give it enough
and maybe
time,
that's why you end up with like
prove it.
Right. Maybe that's why you end up with like extraterrestrials who can fly UFOs with thoughts and stuff. Right. And why you end up with species with, psychic communications and whatnot, like is reported by so many abductees.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we covered this Bashar for the week.
That was a good one.
Yeah, he's a good one.
You can always rely on him to say something interesting. I
still want to do like a full coverage of like a full on like watching him enter, because watching him enter is a whole different experience. Like watching him enter the body for a channeling and stuff.
You've seen that?
Like I've seen that one time or a couple times early on. But I'm struggling trying to find his like channel for just him, or where he's posting all these things, or where he's hosting all this. I haven't been able to find it. So, but I've watched a ton of his videos, and I've watched them. Like you can watch the full thing, but I want it from the source.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at a lot of stuff on Instagram. Have you been searching like YouTube and stuff?
I have been, but I haven't found like a Bashar account. It's more like other people taking his stuff and like
maybe a full interview with him or something.
Well, I've seen Daryl Anka's interviews and stuff, but as far as Bashar, a lot of it's kind of like secondhand stuff lately. I don't know if that's
before we take a break, there was another really good Danny Jones podcast this week.
Really? Who was it? Who was on it?
He's an anthropologist. What do they call it now? Physical anthropologist? Biological anthropologist? What's the term they use now? But he studies skeletons and like human and hominid skeletons and cranial development and whatnot.
Okay.
And his whole theory is that UFOs and aliens like the Greys or whatnot are actually future humans. And he makes an anthropological argument for that. Yeah, this is the guy. I won't play it, but it's...
I wish you put their names in the title.
Yeah, Dr. Michael Masters. So I'll leave a link to this video. Yeah. His stuff is pretty interesting. So he makes a whole like scientific argument that like the way we have been evolving as hominids is moving in a certain direction. And if you continue to draw out that line, ultimately you'll end up with something that looks like the Greys.
Yeah. It's the same kind of ideology that like Joe Rogan's starting to like form. And
I've
like
heard people make that argument, but I haven't heard it as well argued as from an actual anthropologist.
Yeah, I'm down to listen to that.
So he can go into like anthropological detail as to why that is in fact a good argument.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, it's a good one. And then there was another one I checked out. And dude, we could totally do an episode on this one, but I'm just gonna link it instead. Let me switch to my account. Yeah, this guy right here, Matthew Pines. Have you seen any of his stuff?
Mm-mm.
So he's like a national security guy. And he just has really smart analysis. He's just this very open-minded, but like way like at the cutting edge dude who like understands all these different sciences and how the government works within national security. And like, he's able to like synthesize all these fields and speak really intelligently on the UFO topic. Okay. And this interview is like just really good. I'd recommend it as well. So I'll link that in the show notes as well.
Okay.
So having said that, why don't we take our next break and then we can hop into some Lew Elizondo.
Sounds good.
This is TJ McNulty and this song is called 21 Young.
Words are only words, but I believed yours. For some reason I thought of you as my world, but you're just a person. And this is only heartache if I accept it. Remember, your mind pulls together faster than your heart. Don't forget it. 21 young is all that I am. I'm too young to understand love, but think I can. waste my time with you. Well, I am only me. I'm sorry I don't exceed expectations you had for me. My apologies. But your love was only love for the idea of me. Well, yes, we actually had a click, but you got sick of me. I can say the same things. 21 young is all that we are. We're too dumb to understand love, but think we know our futures. Well, maybe someday I'll think about this a different way and be thankful that I got to waste my time with you. Well, that was really us, so something was bound to give. I know I fight issues with my trust, and you just wanna live.
Welcome back.
All right.
That was a longer break
Segment
than
3.
normal.
Yeah, we had one of the kiddos woke up. He's struggling to get back to sleep, but
Now Drew's trying to infect me with his yawns over here.
yeah. Late night recording.
What? It's not like it's almost midnight or something. All right, cool. Well, let's hop into some Lew Elizondo.
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to start on chapter 3. And this is the chapter where he kind of goes over his entire like military service past,
Okay.
which I don't think is super relevant. So read the book if you want to go over that yourself.
Just talk about like some of his like operations he was a part of, or like just like generally.
Well, he
like,
talks
what
about
was
kind of
doing.
his like history in life, like his childhood and upbringing, and he kind of had like a broken home, and
Okay.
his dad was he was in the Cuban military, fighting with Castro before Castro turned communist, and then he was part of the rebels and
The resistance.
yeah, and then he came out here and he basically like trained Lou in like military to like one day go back and fight to free Cuba and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And all this. Anyway, and he like joined the ROTC and got in a bunch of fights as a kid. And anyway, then he goes through his kind of like military career and whatnot. And then it gets to this part, which I'm going to read, which is really interesting, which is where he gets sort of recruited to learn to do remote viewing.
Oh yeah, you had mentioned this before.
Yeah. So we'll pick up there. So
Okay.
I was recommended by Lieutenant Colonel Michael Sieg, a mentor of mine, for a new position in a specialized cadre I had never heard of. the Army's Great Skills program. The phone call came late one afternoon. Be prepared to meet in 2 hours. At a cheap motel in the middle of the Arizona desert, a burly, gray-bearded man waited for me. He looked like he would be more comfortable on a Harley chopper than in his suit. His face was worn like an old leather wallet. He walked with a slight limp on his left side. Gene Lessman, that husky intelligence officer, was the lead recruiter for all things spooky in the Army. In Vietnam, Gene had been a member of the elite Special Operations Group, SOG, and a Green Beret. He had also been a part of the infamous Project Phoenix, which targeted Viet Cong leaders. His compromised gait was caused by several gunshot wounds he sustained while leaping from a helicopter in the field. Gene was a man's man and not someone to be trifled with. Gene had flown from Hanover, Virginia to see me. You're being considered for a government position, he told me. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Thus begun one of the most rapid-fire interrogations I'd ever experienced. Where was I from? What did I do when I wasn't on post? Who were my parents? Why was it important for me to serve my country? On and on and on the questions came, sometimes circling back to the very same ones. It was exactly the sort of elicitation technique we'd studied in one of my courses. You hit your subjects with circular round of queries to see if their responses are consistent. Great Skills was a long-running program that Army intelligence used to recruit young soldiers whom they had identified as having special talents and that they could train and use for soldier spies. How they tested out those abilities, I was never told. How about remote viewing? Know what that is? Nope, I responded. I was later told by Gene that the Great Skills program was also called Gray Fox. Gene was a MICAP, MICACP, which stood for Military Intelligence Civilian Accepted Career Program. Gene was a civilian intelligence case officer who worked for the Army. I later found out that Gene also spotted and recruited soldiers into another highly secret operation called Stargate, or at least what was left of it. He never made it clear if his efforts with Stargate were ever a part of the official mission of Gray Fox. Stargate was embedded in the federal government, run for years by the CIA and later the DIA. Recruits were trained to spy upon enemies, but not in the usual way. Stargate trained quote-unquote super soldiers to spy on hard targets using their psychic gifts. No, I am not kidding. This was an official U.S. government program. They called the highly controversial technique remote viewing. The program, pioneered at Stanford University in the late 1960s, was led by none other than Hal Puthoff, whom I met at the dinner meeting I described earlier. Hal had been a Stanford University researcher and an employee of the NSA when he and his colleague Russell Targ were approached by the CIA and told that Russia had a remote viewing program. The U.S. needed to catch up and beat their efforts. That's how it all started. Extrasensory perception had won over supporters in government who were initially dubious, then shocked that the technique worked. No one understood the mechanism, and the CIA didn't care why it worked. The only thing that matters is that it did. When government-trained psychics focused their attention on a particular subject, they gleaned images, feelings, thoughts, and intelligence that were otherwise impossible to collect via conventional spy tradecraft. Stargate became so successful, Hal reported directly to the director of the CIA and the White House on a regular basis. As a measure of the program's success, that can be talked about. Its psychics once located a Russian supersonic jet that crashed somewhere off Africa. Our best satellites couldn't locate it, and neither could the Russians. One of our remote viewers saw and pinpointed the exact location of the downed aircraft in the Congo. The U.S. was able to sweep in and salvage this valuable target based on the remote viewer's visions alone. President Jimmy Carter famously referenced the case to the media. Remote viewers also located Brigadier General James Lee Dozier, who had been kidnapped in Italy by the Red Brigade in 1981. In the Persian Gulf War, remote viewers identified and located storage facilities that housed deadly chemical war agents. The success stories of the remote viewing were legion and seemed almost magical. The stories I can't share are even more mind-blowing. Dude.
They're using them through all these different conflicts for just all sorts of like reconnaissance and like intelligence needs.
Right.
But this is what he was being used for. It doesn't mean that that's what all of the remote viewers were being used for.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like all things the government and that challenge the current status quo or make people question their sense of reality, Stargate had its detractors and enemies. Congress had pulled the funding for the psychic spy program sometime prior to my recruitment, and Gene was working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep a small cadre of remote viewers operational. While there was still time, Gene wanted me to become one of his psychic spies. I remember questioning whether the Army would let me leave my current commitment. I still had 2 more years to serve on my enlistment contract. What if the Army doesn't want to let me go? I asked. Gene rocked back in his chair and laughed. Son, we are the Army, the secret Army. To get some hours under my belt, Gene shared an old remote viewing manual with me, but the real training would come from putting myself through the paces. When the best remote viewers were in the zone, they could penetrate enemy installations and have a look around. They could locate personnel or vital assets. They could even allegedly disrupt or incapacitate the minds of adversaries. During remote viewing sessions, a seasoned viewer could draw images, maps, coordinates, details, everything they had seen. I doubted if I'd ever be able to rack up achievements that noteworthy, but Gene gave his best to train me. I remember meeting Gene at one of the old motels in Sierra Vista. He had me sit in a chair, my head bowed slightly, my eyes focused to an imaginary horizon, soft focus, nothing too intense, nothing that would strain a single sinew in my body. Behind me, I heard Gene's voice. Go on, he said. Start whenever you're ready. I kept my breath even and easy. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was later told that to get in the zone, I often rubbed my thumbs and index fingers together, like turning the dial on a radio that existed only in my imagination. I often perceived and even felt a slight current or flow that was called by the graybeards a signal line. I turned this invisible knob and rolled through the stations one by one, catching disjointed fragments of sound, emotions, and even smells. The trick to remote viewing was not to judge. You reported what came to you, free of judgment, no AO, no analytical overlay. Just let it come. A good remote viewer must avoid the innate temptation we all have to see patterns. You must abandon all preconceived notions of what something might be. In daily life, pattern recognition helps us not to overload our brains with too much data. It serves as a filter, allowing us to recognize and isolate patterns that could prove dangerous to us. But the tendency of our brain to say, hey, I know what that is, proves disastrous for remote viewing. Sometimes Gene would give me an envelope, ask me to describe the location mentioned inside it. Only I couldn't open the envelope. A day later, he changed the procedure slightly. I was to direct my attention to a photograph Gene was holding, but that I couldn't see. Before we started, he verbally gave me the geographical coordinates of the object in question. But without consulting a map, I had no idea where in the world I was supposed to focus. The place was not really relevant. The object was. At other times, he would simply ask, "What's inside the envelope?" I know it sounds like an impossible task, but if I listened to the radio in my heart, in my mind, I nearly always gleaned something useful. I breathed. I kept it steady. The radio dial stopped rolling and honed in. I envisioned the signal line like a glowing whitish river that flowed like a circuit in the direction I was supposed to go. Not a physical river, but a river that I could feel. A river that would lead to strange places and strange people whom I had never met. With practice, I got better. I would later take these techniques I learned with me to subsequent assignments. After a while, remote viewing became second nature to me. I was able to put myself in the zone without any sort of protocol or ritual. I was excited. Yeah, anyway. Pretty crazy, though.
Yeah.
This is kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Like, what's the difference between like remote viewing, between dreaming, between out of body experiences, between shamanism? You know, like.
Well, and what are they focusing their remote viewing on?
Right.
Like, because it seems like you could focus your remote viewing on all sorts of like arbitrary things, but you can also focus on things that are quite important as far as like what they're trying to like uncover.
Right.
But you can also focus it on just like the daily lives of certain people, or like certain outfits, or certain like specific things that you want to like view without having to like have your presence felt, you know?
Yeah, and it seems like because I think he was kind of describing like an envelope that wasn't even in the room, right?
Right.
And he would be given the GPS coordinates to it, but
not what's in it.
So I wonder if the coordinates even mattered, or if the fact that he was asked by someone and the person he was asked by knew, like he was somehow like picking up based on that person's knowledge.
Some sort of location.
So I wonder, is this actually like a case of actually going out of the body to where that envelope is based on some random coordinates? Or is it more like some sort of psychic connection with the person asking the question? Or is it a combination, you know?
A combination plus your own ability to like move outside of that freely, in a sense.
Right, because if the person asking the question knows what's in the envelope,
right,
then in theory it would be possible to pull it out of them. But I wonder if they were if they conducted experiments to isolate it and such that the person asking the questions also did not know.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be an important distinction, I guess, to know. But either way, I mean, it sounds like they're doing a lot of the same type of experience that we've heard about from remote viewers,
right,
as far as like getting outside the room, getting out, you know.
But specifically, like the example earlier of like a downed spy plane in the middle of the Congo, no one knowing where it is, can't find it on satellites, and a remote viewer pinpoints it.
Yeah.
For recovery. Like that, I mean, if that story is true, then there's no way like remote viewing still isn't happening inside the government. I know it's not acknowledged anymore. It's acknowledged as having been completely shut down by now, but you don't just like give away an asset
don't abandon something like that, yeah. Even if it gives you like small amounts of detail for
You would
things
probably
that you
just tuck
can't-
it inside of a deeper special access program or something.
And you have certain people that you rely on to give you details about it, but
Pretty crazy.
yeah. And he was doing this. He was one of the remote viewers, huh?
He was a remote viewer.
Wow.
I was excited to join the ranks of the few elite remote viewers when I was given the unfortunate news that the program had been completely dismantled.
Yeah.
I would be going to Panama as an intelligence operations officer. On that note, I took the job, and just like that, I was released from my obligations to the Army as an enlisted soldier and became a civilian working for the Army. Though I was actually paid for this work by the NSA, which I never understood. To this day, I have no idea if Gene had originally intended me to be one of his remote viewers or if he was merely assessing me. Nevertheless, it wasn't for nothing. However, the skills Gene taught me, I would use time and time again. While running counterintelligence operations, I routinely assessed counterintelligence reports. Let's say that an informant had a particular location that was important. Was it? I'd shift to remote viewing mode and try to put myself in that location. How did I feel about the intel now? Once in the Middle East, I had a bad feeling about a specific location that 5 of my men were scheduled to investigate the very next day. We can't do it, I told one of my subordinates. There's something off about this. I don't want you guys going in. Well, that's fine, he said tersely, but someone's going in. Besides, the British already cleared the area yesterday. An Allied team went in instead and encountered an IED. In the following years, I was privileged to meet 4 other remote viewers who had been trained in the discipline. We often talked about our experiences with the technique. One afternoon, we discussed the capture of a suspected terrorist who had been in the U.S. government's radar for a long time. He was being held in a location thousands of miles from us. I had been to the location before. As a test, we all gathered together in a secure facility in the Pentagon with our brown bag lunches and attempted to act an act of group remote viewing. We directed our conjoined thoughts toward a specific terrorist in a cell. None of us had any sympathy for the ruthless killer who gleefully took the lives of our comrades. I wondered if we would leave a real impact on him. Something happened, all right. Months later, we learned that the terrorist had told his lawyers that the CIA had sent 5 angels to disrupt his sleep. 5 figures washed in white light stood over his bed and shook it violently, leaving him terrified. He felt that judgment was upon him. He shared the story with his attorney, and the tale later ended up in a mainstream newspaper article about the secret CIA program being used to harass his client. I told how put off what we had done. He was not surprised. So
He had seen it before, maybe.
So you can use remote viewing not just to like gather information, but to like travel to someone and harass them. So I wonder how many of these like night terrors type things
Or like
are someone remote viewing you.
Ghosts and other like enigma.
Right.
Or somebody remote viewing you.
Like what are the extent
the
of your
current-
abilities within a remote viewing state, you know?
Yeah, are you able to affect physical matter where you can like throw things around the room?
Yeah. Can you
be a poltergeist?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
That's a interesting.
I haven't heard that
Interesting
about
point.
remote viewing
Yeah.
before, but
That's a good look inside the remote viewing program, because a lot of times you just hear about like the cool stories of like them like seeing some alien base on the moon or underwater, or
right,
you know,
or
in
traveling
Alaska
to another
or something.
planet. Yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah.
The best practitioners of remote viewing, Pat Price, and Ingo Swan, Joe McMonigal, achieved incredible results from a couch on the West Coast. Price penetrated a secret NSA location in West Virginia and correctly described identifying labels on manila file folders locked in a subterranean cabinet. In one session, Swan claimed to have remote viewed Jupiter and described its very thin rings, which would only be spotted and confirmed by unmanned probes years later.
Did he work with Swan? Is that what he's saying?
So what he's saying, he's just kind of describing the best of the remote viewers.
Oh, okay.
And he's saying like he was being trained for it, but that the program got canceled before he ever got sent
really
on like purposeful remote viewing missions.
Okay. But otherwise he was kind of like trained in it, but never really got to fully use it because it was
he
dismantled by then.
Right. But he did continue to use it in his own military career.
Okay.
Gene used to tell me, people with your gifts are rare. I'm not gifted, I'd say. Oh, yes, you are. Turns out we were both right. The reality was a large number of the population was and is capable of remote viewing. The training was rare, not the gift. Once I heard a compelling explanation of remote viewing. I was told it was a vestigial ability early humans relied upon before the development of spoken language. Household pets rely on this sixth sense in order to determine if another animal is a threat. Before humans had words, we may have had this ability too. How many times in your life have you felt that words are not adequate to express your feelings? I'll bet you're gripped by that frustration about half a dozen times a month, especially if you're in a relationship with someone you love.
Yeah.
We consider language a great achievement of evolution, but what if we could connect wordlessly with others at great distances? An interesting thing about remote viewing is that it must be used for purely good intentions, not for bad or for personal or selfish gain. Call it karma or something else. All remote viewers learn this one way or the other. Whether or not they practice this is another thing. Remote viewers, he doesn't say why there.
I was going to say, it'd be nice to know a little bit more.
Is he saying it doesn't work or that, like, that's all you're allowed to do? I wonder. Remote viewing deserves science, not scorn. Yet close-minded zealots stormed in and trampled Stargate to death. In the waning days of the program, one member of Stargate was stunned to hear a government supervisor's reason for opposing further funding. You are working with people who are in league with the devil, the boss said. As crazy as it sounded then, I later heard similar nonsense from high-level government officials determined to shut down our UAP investigation. But we'll get to that later. Needless to say, it's not good for the United States or humanity to have these sorts of closed-minded officials who reflexively fight and dismiss anything that questions their personal religious beliefs. To say it holds back progress and growth is an understatement. It also gives our adversaries an advantage since they do not have these moral hurdles. Former government sidekick Joe McMoneagle, who has authored a fine book on the subject, once attended a meeting in which he received two conflicting opinions on his gift. A senator snarled at him, "You, sir, are doing the work of the devil, and you will burn in the fires of hell." As McMoneagle stepped into the hall, he was approached by another lawmaker who embraced him warmly and whispered in his ear, you are doing God's work, son." While Stargate lost its funding, the truth is the government and military never stopped using a tool that works. Why would they? Our adversaries don't. Programs don't just move. Our programs just move and change names. Only close friends of mine like John Robert knew my past work history. In fact, I taught John how to remote view, and he's extremely good at it. I could write an entire book on remote viewing, but the point is that I was stunned to learn that I could perform this work and that I unofficially contributed to my military assignments. So that's chapter 3. So Lew Elizondo is a remote viewer.
Wow. I mean, at least he had a lot of cursory, documentation, or at least experiences with remote viewing, and a lot of secondary information about a lot of the programs they did do before his time.
Right. If you remember in the first episode we did, he was sort of alluding to his past military service when he was talking about how he wasn't he was picked for the UAP program because he had this weird sort of past in military service. This is what they were alluding to. This is remote viewing past.
So because he had this, he
kind of has an open mind.
He was more open-minded than the majority of the people. Right. I see.
And maybe the remote viewing would have been determined as an asset to them for hunting down information on something that was such a slippery topic. That could have been a part of it as well.
Wow. So, do you have anything else you wanted to cover of his real quick? Because I'm thinking we might have to do a short one here.
Yeah, we're going to have to. I see you falling asleep over there, so.
I'm losing it.
No, it's all good. Cool.
We'll do a short episode this week.
We got one chapter down, and then I'll have some more on our next week.
Yeah. We're planning on doing a couple of episodes back to back, so we're going to bump out a few of these.
Yeah, we'll pre-record a few, probably both Lew Elizondo episodes with some other stuff thrown in.
Yeah.
So we'll be back next week for part 4. But yeah, I just thought the whole thing that it's just a weird, unexpected element that I'd never expected going into the Lew Elizondo book was to expect him having a past in remote viewing.
Yeah, that's very surprising. And he doesn't talk about it much on podcasts either.
Right.
It's one of those things that he reserves for his book.
Yeah.
So that's
maybe he's talked about it on podcasts, but not any of the ones I've seen.
Yeah, none of the ones that I've seen either. So.
And the other thing that's interesting about that is the kind of small world connections. And maybe that's part of why he got recruited too, because Hal Putoff was one of those graybeards he talks about who was involved in the UAP program. And he was the one running the remote viewing stuff.
That's true.
Maybe Hal was between his friend John Robert recommending him and also Hal being oh, this guy's got a remote viewing past. He's kind of perfect for this.
Yeah. I mean, Hal we could probably do a whole episode on Hal and all of the things he's had his hand in.
Yeah.
And all of the different topics. And
I want to go back and listen to that Jesse Michaels, Eric Weinstein, Hal Putoff interview conversation.
And there's a lot of other stuff from Hal that I've seen come out. So I think he might be one of those people that we should keep an eye on.
Yeah, there's a really interesting point in this book later on where he essentially goes over an entire Hal Putoff presentation on his theory on how UFOs work.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yeah, that'd be a good thing to cover too.
Yeah, so Hal's a big player in the UFO movement. Their UFO investigations.
All right, y'all. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Hit us up on YouTube or Instagram, Facebook. DM us on any of the social media platforms.
Leave us a review on podcasts.
Yeah, you can find our link tree. It links to everything we've got on social media. Email us at host@dualitycheck.net. or visit our website at dualitycheck.net, and you'll find all the episodes and all the show notes and all the links up there. YouTube, Rumble, if you're looking for something a little bit more decentralized and you're looking for something. Our website's also good for that. Hit us up. We want to hear you guys' input on a lot of these topics. And
what do you think about remote viewing?
Yeah.
Is it real? What's the difference between remote viewing and dreams and out-of-body experiences and shamanism? Tell us.
Is it all just a matter of drugs and different inputs? I don't know. We'll see. All right, y'all.
We'll see you next week. Adios.